Live from San Francisco, it's Rex Broadcasting Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We got Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly here as well. Second hour, we're going to have with us Don FRYE, who in just a couple of weeks, in 2 weeks, will be fighting Mark Coleman, which is something he's looked forward to for 7 years. And I don't think too many people have looked forward to fighting Mark Coleman at any point, let alone for 7 years. But we'll be talking to him about his thoughts on that. That'll be in Pride. It'll actually air the Friday after the Sunday on pay-per-view in the United States. And we also have a surprise on FRYE in the second hour, and we'll talk about that when it happens. But we're going to have a really good second hour. I can guarantee it because Don FRYE is one of the better guests that we've ever had on the show. And so, anyway, Bryan, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
That's good. Now, we haven't talked in 2 weeks, and I don't know that a lot has really changed. A lot of little things have happened. Sometimes, when we talk about a pay-per-view beforehand and, we kind of are down on the lineup, and then we get surprised, and, well, last Sunday was not one of those cases.
No, it was not. Although I will say that when we were leading to the main event, a friend of mine made the prediction that the main event would be good, and I laughed, and he was right.
Yeah, the main event was good, and that lineup was unsalvageable. But the thing that was the worst thing about that show, though, was not the match quality, but the mentality of the people writing it, because they've really come to the idea that it's the skits. The skits are, we now have pay-per-view with all those skits, and I think that those skits are one of the reasons the television is unbearable, and I think it made the pay-per-view a lot worse. Well,
it's one thing on TV. I'm not defending the bad comedy on TV, but if you're going to watch bad comedy, at least watch bad comedy for free. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, if they want to be Friends, even if they were as funny as Friends, would you still pay $30 to watch an episode of Friends?
Very few people would.
Yeah.
I would not.
So
there you go. And then the night after, we had the Ric Flair situation, and we're coming up to a commercial break, but we're going to come back and talk more about Ric Flair. We're going to talk about NWA TNA. We're going to talk about the career of Ken Shamrock, and plenty of other things that are going on in the world of professional wrestling. If you want to join in, you can join us at 1-800-878-PLAY, although all the lines are busy. But first hour, you can get in a lot of calls. Second hour, we're going to mainly be talking to Don FRYE. And if you want to talk to Don FRYE, just wait till the second hour. But we will have a lot to say then. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. You wake up.
Hey, this is Bret Hart. It's Wrestling Observer Live with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez. Two guys who eat, sleep, and drink pro wrestling, even when it doesn't taste good.
Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I think that over the years, when that thing gets played over and over again, it will probably be more apropos as time goes on. There's a WWA pay-per-view, by the way, in Auckland, New Zealand. It'll be, I'm not even sure what date it's going to be airing in the United States, probably in about a month or two, with Sting and Jeff Jarrett, where they unified the WWA titles and the NWA titles in both the heavyweight and the cruiserweight X division, and the NWA TNA guys won both. Jeff Jarrett beating Sting with the help from Rick Steiner, and Chris Sabin winning a four-way over, over Jerry Lynn, Johnny Swinger, and Frankie Kazarian, and so Chris Sabin has unified those championships.
Will that be mentioned?
Wednesday? Maybe. If I was them, I would mention it.
Yeah.
Now, so I guess that means maybe. Let's see. Monday was a very interesting night of Raw because Ric Flair got another chance to be a babyface. It worked, and he'll be a heel again tomorrow, so that was pretty good, huh?
All I could think of when that show was over was I had this vision of Brian Gewirtz in the back.
Going, why did this get over?
With his sit down going, Ric Flair is really entertaining. Like it hitting him for the first time. I mean, there's this 54-year-old man who's like the most entertaining thing on the show 2 weeks in a row. And I can just see this blowing this young man's mind.
His mind? Just think about everybody else's.
I think a lot of people kind of already knew.
Yeah, but okay, I can tell you something about Ric Flair, okay, because I've been hearing this since, I would say, oh God, maybe about 1988 that, Ric Flair needs to step aside, okay? And believe me, as a weekly character, it's long past the day where Ric Flair should be carrying the company, even though he did, again, this week. But, I remember, I'll be writing about this soon, about Starrcade 88, where we got to get rid of Ric Flair because that's the problem. And then after Starrcade 89, and that was like the best year of Ric Flair's career in the ring, and, the people in the company going like, once we get rid of Ric Flair and we build this company around Luger and Sting, then we're going to turn it around. And it's like, you would think that after all that the guy has done, that people wouldn't think that he was like the actual problem. And yet, for years he was always the problem. And then for years, has been over as long as Rick Flair, who has been buried underneath the sand in the desert with his watch stolen, and done the things that Ric Flair has done, and then still come back like this.
Yeah, and if there could ever be another one, it would be Kurt Angle.
Maybe, but he's not going to last.
Well, he's not going to last, but as far as the guy that has gotten over in spite of everything that's been done to him.
Yeah, how do you like that? The fact that they're looking like they're going to bring him back with as a babyface now. It looks like the babyface forces won the argument.
Well, it won the argument Thursday.
Yeah, I know. We still got a couple of weeks to go. No, but I just everything kind of leads me to believe that that's where they're going.
Yeah.
Of course.
And the other thing, going back to that Ric Flair thing real fast, the other moral of that story is people never seem to know what the problem really is.
Isn't it so easy, though?
Well,
I got to tell you a story. I can't tell you who the person was, but Bryan actually knows the story. There's someone who I know who sent a book, NWA TNA, and booked, I think, 2 months of the show in about an hour and 10 minutes. And it made me realize, and I bet if you and I sat down, we could probably do that too. But
actually, when I read that email, I was almost like, it took that long. You know what I mean?
But these guys spend hours and hours on one show.
Yeah. Yeah.
A week on one show.
And, I think that might even be part of the problem It is
the problem.
This should not be a 40-hour-a-week job to book a 2-hour wrestling show. It really shouldn't, because when you're taking 40 hours a week to book a 2-hour wrestling show, you're overanalyzing everything.
Yeah.
And you're making things far more complicated than they need to be. That thing on TNA last week, I sit there on Saturday afternoon, because that's when I watch the shows, and I'm kind of sleepy, and I'm laying on the couch, and all of a sudden they come on and they're going, okay, we're going to have this tournament, and you're going to get 1 point for hitting a dude with an object.
Oh, that was so lame.
You get 5 points for putting a guy through a tail, and you have to win by 2 points, and you can't bring anything to the ring. You can only use stuff that's already down there. And I was just thinking, this is way too complicated for me. But I don't want to have to think about this stuff. I just want to watch people beat each other up.
Yeah. But then they started a second tournament where the whole idea was that the partners are supposed to be enemies, except then they have the 2 best tag teams in the company vying for entry into this tournament that, like, Kid Cash and Trinity, and even worse, what was it, Stacy and, not Stacy, Tracy. I can't even get these people. I don't even care about these people, right?
Yes.
Tracy and David Young. Tracy and David Young are in a tournament that AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown and Chris Harris and James Storm have to qualify for. All Harris and Storm have done, and then we have to deal with this. And they didn't show this on TV, but they in fact did do it in the arena. That Chris Harris and James Storm, it's now established. This is not any longer my theory. Okay, it was my theory from the beginning that they should not break up, as everyone knows. Okay. So then they did the tease and sort of break. They've been teasing the breakup for weeks and weeks. Then they finally did the match, and nobody wanted to see the match. Okay. So now the decision is like, okay, we're not going to break them up. God, I'm thinking about this booking. Do you remember originally it was supposed to be Chris Harris that was going to go heel. Then it was supposed to be James Storm that was going to go heel. Then it was we're going to keep them together. Okay? Yeah. And then at the last, if you remember, they sort of wrestled heel-ish, although they were against some babyface team. But at the end of the match, for the people in the building, they in fact had them arguing all the way to the back. And it's like, we've already established that the people only want them together as a team. They don't want us to watch them feud. So why do we keep... Yeah.
And don't forget the entire genesis of that tournament is because all the factions could not get along. So in order to restore order...
We're gonna have these matches that are a total mess.
These would be teaming together and trying to get along.
Okay. Well, we're going to get off of that. Ken Shamrock tore his ACL this week. He is out of the June 6th UFC show, so Ian Freeman will be facing Vernon Tiger White, who's Ken Shamrock's protege, and that I don't want to say that does a number on the show because that show actually has a pretty strong main event with Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell and has Tank Abbott and Chemo, and I'm not exactly sure what to expect from that. And Vitor Belfort's going to be fighting, and Pedro Hizzo and Trey Teligman. It's an interesting show. But marquee-wise, I mean, with Tito Ortiz, whoever he is, Ken Shamrock's the biggest draw, and he's off the show. And
I almost got my prediction right, by the way.
What was your prediction? The match wasn't going to take place?
No, that they would both win, and then someone would get hurt, and Tank and Ken would never fight.
They probably will never fight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's possible they'll fight. I don't know. You know, you can come back from that injury, but I wouldn't recommend it at that age.
Is he 40 now?
39.
39.
Jerry Rice came back, and I don't know how old Jerry Rice was when he came back. He was.
Well, when you come back at that age to fight another old man, not so bad.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What else?
Tank and Chemo could be like a slobber knocker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it will be. Don't you think?
Just like Takayama and Fujita or something.
I don't think it'll be that good.
Well,
I think they're going to get. I think they're going to get tired a lot quicker. I don't think that they're in the condition that. I don't want to say Takayama doesn't look like he's in condition, but he's one of those guys who just goes through it.
Yeah.
And Fujita does train hard. You know, he just can't block a punch.
I think Takayama's just a guy that does a ton of cardio, but just eats so much that it doesn't matter. He doesn't get any thinner.
But have you ever seen, I guess you probably never seen Takayama when he was like 25 years old? He was ripped.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like 230 pounds instead of 270, and like this tall, ripped guy who, in fact, he had a swimmer body because, you know, he was a champion swimmer when he was like in high school.
It's amazing in wrestling, a lot of people with swimmer bodies can turn it around.
Yeah.
Like Hunter?
Yeah, well, Takayama and Hunter, their bodies changed for entirely different reasons.
Oh, come on.
We're going to go to the... Should we go to the phones or should we head to a break? I will say that we are going to head to a break first, and we're going to go to the phones right after this break. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. And if you're interested in information on either of those publications, you can go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. We also have daily updates of news, reviews of all the television shows and all the stuff up there. And not this week, but next week's Observer will be part 4 of the history of the WWF, and we're going to be covering some pretty interesting years there. The Ted Turner purchase of World Championship Wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions actually, and Zahorian trial, Hulk Hogan's hiatus. God, what else in that period? It's going to be. I'm really looking forward to writing that part of wrestling. Kind of going through the history of. I guess we'll be going about 1988 through probably about 1991, 1992. So it's probably the most talked about.
It'll be well worth the purchase.
Yeah, it's the most talked about series I think we've done, maybe ever. So. Anyway, anything special in the Figure 4 this week?
I don't know yet. It's a good question.
Yeah.
We'll have previews up.
Okay. Well, before we go to the calls, I want to talk about the Bad Blood pay-per-view. You know what? It's interesting on that one is I actually watched a Bad Blood pay-per-view getting ready for tonight's show the other day. Stuck in the tape of a couple of The Bad Blood pay-per-view was the name of the pay-per-view that Pride did. I believe for is Don Frye and Takayama? I don't know. I watched the Don Frye Takayama and the Don Frye Shamrock pay-per-views, and you know, again, it
was Don Frye Shamrock Bad Blood.
That was Bad Blood. Okay. The thing about watching those shows, you know, at that point in time, we were getting pretty good, in fact, usually pretty darn good WWE pay-per-views, and we didn't get that last time, and we actually didn't get the month before. And NWA TNA, we've gone through 3 straight bad ones, so we're on a run. I'm on a run of seeing bad pay-per-views the last couple of weeks, and I watched the tapes of those 2 shows, especially the first one, which I guess would be the Bad Blood show with Don Frye and Ken Shamrock, and that show was so freaking great. I mean, I couldn't even believe it, and Boss Root and Stephen Quadros blow away everyone.
Oh yes.
When it comes to wrestling announcing, I mean, it's like Boss Rootin is so great. So, I mean, just, I don't know what it is. It's just so great.
The two of them together.
Yeah, they just have fun.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we're going to...
And you know, the thing kind of in a similar vein is, you know, we get a lot of emails from people that are so depressed about wrestling and they want to stop watching and everything like that, but I just wish people would understand how much great stuff there really is in the world. I mean, even today...
Yeah, I always say that, too. Like today the Ricky Marvin Zumbido match.
Yeah, if you're so upset about wrestling, you should have watched Galavision today if you have a satellite, because there was a damn great wrestling match on that show today.
Two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's okay. You may have to work at it, but if you like old-time storylines, there's OVW. I mean, I'm rarely unhappy when I watch OVW. I can't wait when I get those tapes. I usually get them on Monday. It's going to be Tuesday, unfortunately. And I usually watch it right after Raw. So, you know, I mean, I may be bummed out, although I wasn't last Monday when Raw was over, but I'm only bummed out for an hour. And usually only about 10 minutes because usually about 10 minutes into that OVW show, I'm already in a good mood.
Yeah. And look at how much money people spend on pay-per-views now, $34.95.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of wrestling for $34.95 if you're really that upset about Judgment Day.
Yeah. And I mean, like, some of the Noah stuff in this year has been tremendous.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the last, you know, it really is. You know, I know.
Watch some Russia Kimura.
Okay, now that is bad.
That was worth it, though. That was a special kind of bad.
Oh, that's bad. That's like worse than anything you've ever seen.
It's so bad that I showed many of my friends that match, and they all loved it. They really did, because it was so unlike anything they'd ever seen before.
Well, then you should like Piper.
Yeah, well, no, this was at a different level than that, even.
I know. Real quick, on the Bad Blood pay-per-view in Houston on June 15th, top matches, Triple H against Kevin Nash in a Hell in a Cell, Bill Goldberg against Chris Jericho. Now, I do believe that there's going to be some funny stuff in that Bill Goldberg-Chris Jericho thing tomorrow night. Booker T for the Intercontinental and Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels. So they are, unless it's changed, that's the plan.
Well, that's good.
So the match that they should have had in Charlotte looks like they're going to have there. We're going to go...
Hey, when is Hall of Fame voting? August, right?
August, yes.
Okay, just wondering. I really think the Shawn Michaels DVD is going to help him out this year.
You would think so. You know what would help him out?
I'm very excited about that.
Okay, but you know what would help him?
Not just me.
Okay, you know what would help him out the most and will not happen? Is him losing to Ric Flair. I think that if he lost to Ric Flair in a great match, he'd be in. I think if he beats Ric Flair in a so-so match, he still might be in.
What if he beats him in a great match?
Yeah. Hey, how many great matches has the guy had in his career? It's just another one.
Yeah.
The thing that gets people down is more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's just work quality, he's in. Let's face it.
And the thing is, he refused a job so many times in his prime that now, when I don't think he would refuse a job and is asked to win, people still look at it in a different way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, like with Jericho. Because I have no doubt that... Okay, but you know what, though? When he lost to Jericho, okay, or when he beat Jericho, I should say, at WrestleMania, you know, I figured, it's no big deal because it was a great match, and I'm going to beat him when, you know, at some point pretty soon.
Yeah. Okay,
well, pretty soon's over, and Jericho didn't beat him. And now I'm really wondering what the purpose was of that finish.
Well, yeah, regardless, though, that was not, I don't think that was his idea. I don't think that was him saying, I'm not going to lose to Chris Jericho.
No, I know it wasn't. I know.
People are going to look at it like that because of all the times in his career that he refused to put somebody over.
But it would be good that if on this run he put somebody over besides Hunter or maybe Kevin Nash if that were to end up happening.
But even if he does it, that's not his fault right now. That's his problem.
No, you're right. That's not his fault.
Coming back to bite him now. All those times he didn't put someone over, now when he's actually asked to win and he does it, he is looked at like, oh, you shouldn't have won. You should have put him over.
But but you know, on the Jericho thing, he shouldn't have won unless it was to build up him losing. And now that it's not to build up him losing, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another thing. Let's get to the calls. We're going to go to Dan in Chicago. Dan, what's up?
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much.
Sting, since he lost the WWA title.
Yes.
I think that's his way of coming into WWE?
Everything that I hear is that's not... I don't think he wants to do the schedule. Then again, the Goldberg schedule isn't all that difficult. So it's kind of up to Sting. I don't know. It's not as close as it probably was a ways back.
I don't know. I think he'll be there before Bad Blood. That's just my opinion.
It's possible. I mean, there's no deal, but it's possible.
Right.
You know.
And 4 years ago, this past weekend, you know, Owen Hart obviously passed away.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that? I mean, 4 years, went by quick.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that in the last couple
I was
of days.
watching, actually, the documentary they did on A&E, when the one that you were in.
Yep.
Man, that was sad. That's just.
Oh, that documentary was sad. I know. I haven't watched that in a long time. I
watched it this weekend.
It was really well put together.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, of all the deaths, of course, in many ways, I think it was the saddest because he had no hand in his own death, and it was really a combination of a lot of things that never should have happened that resulted in his death, and it's, none of the decisions which were his, and it talks about, how petty that wrestling war really was, and how petty the people were, and it's, I know it was on the WWF side that this happened, but it was on both sides. People trying to, outdo each other, not for money, but just to rub it in somebody else's face. And, a guy died because they wanted to make fun of Sting, and they wanted to make fun of, Hulk Hogan, and they wanted to make fun of Bret Hart. And that ain't worth a life.
Martha was saying about how he had to do it, if he...
Had is a funny word. If
he wanted to get out of it.
That's kind of like saying people have to take steroids.
That's right. He certainly felt the pressure to do it, and he certainly didn't want to do it, and he certainly also agreed to do it.
But here's my thing.
Yes.
He wanted to get out of the WWE after what happened with Bret. Now, if he wanted to say no, he could have said no, and that could have been the end of it, and then he could have been out of his contract.
They weren't going to release him from his contract. They would just keep him and not use him as well.
I don't understand why Vince McMahon didn't want him to. If Owen wanted to go, how are you going to hold somebody hostage?
That's what a contract is for. That's the exact reason they sign guys to contracts, because if they get in a bad mood and they go, I want to go, it's like, you can't go. I mean, if it wasn't for that, why even sign guys to contracts?
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's there for. And, in hindsight, Vince was more than happy to let Davey go, because I think he realized that Davey was done, and he was right.
Anvil, too.
Well, Anvil was only there because he was a family member, and, they pushed for him to be there. I mean, Anvil had no special talent by then. But Owen, they thought Owen was going to be a superstar after Bret left. I mean, the plan was for him to be huge, and it didn't work out, but, that's why they weren't going to let him go.
Any truth of Bret Hart was saying on that documentary as well, that they were going to do a couple skits where Goldust was going to fondle him? Any truth to that?
Oh, yeah, that's 100% true. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Man.
yeah. He said no to a couple of things.
Right.
Okay, we got to get running. Okay, we got a full bank of calls. Jonathan in Savannah. Jonathan, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not too much.
I had a statement for you, Dave. I said there was something on the internet about originally with that driver angle on Raw with Lance Storm being the driver. Before that, they had booked it that it was going to be the driver of the white Hummer, and I wanted to get your thoughts, so I figured I'd go to you and figure.
I think that might be urban legend.
I think that might have been us making a joke.
Yeah.
And it became a story.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I had a couple questions for you. First of all, where is this Mr. America lie detector angle from SmackDown?
I do not know. I don't know. I don't know where it's going. I'm sure there will be an inside joke for all of us, come Thursday night when it airs. I just don't know what the joke is.
Okay. Do you have any idea, like, how long they keep on planning, or how long it's going to keep going with before we?
I think
it's got to go through July.
Yeah, I think it'll go for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And my other question was, I read something actually from PW Torch about I don't know when it was, that Nathan Jones had pitched a fit backstage and Johnny Ace had paid him.
I don't think he paid him, but Nathan Jones a couple of weeks back was mad about how things were going, said he wanted to quit and go home, and Johnny Ace talked him into staying. That's true.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. And that was, my other question for you is, I'm assuming Christian will lose the IC belt at the next pay-per-view, which is from Houston, correct?
Yeah, with Booker. I assume that too. They could switch it up, but when the IC title was first discussed, the idea was it was a title for Booker because they wanted to put a belt on Booker and he wasn't going to get Hunter's belt. So, Christian, I think, was there to lose. Was put in the position to lose to Booker, but they can change their mind between now and then, also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we got to go ahead to a break right now. We're back with more right after this. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Time on the Sports Byline Radio Network, talking pro wrestling. Second hour, we're going to be talking to Don FRYE. Boy, during the week, I was going through his career. That guy, I got to tell you, what a resume that guy has. I mean, he went two-time UFC tournament winner, including winning the second Ultimate, which was just about the toughest tournament. Actually, I think up to that point in time, the toughest tournament that there had ever been in mixed martial arts. Then went into pro wrestling and only became, for a while, the biggest American star in all of Japanese wrestling. And back to Pride, and only became, I guess, the second or so behind Sakuraba, probably the second biggest star, third biggest star if you include Bob Sapp, in that organization. And he's got a really tough fight coming up with Mark Holman, which we will talk about in the second hour. Let's go to Jeffrey in New York. Jeffrey, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? I just wanted to ask about Eric Angle. I heard that he was released, and I was wondering, with Kurt Angle being WWF's greatest asset, how can they let him go like that?
Same reason that they let, that Horace Hogan's not in WWE and David Flair's not in WWE. I mean, it's like you have to pull your own weight. And, Eric wasn't making us that they wanted him to.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Just want to comment on two other things. And there was another Bad Blood pay-per-view, I think, a few years ago, I think, with, was it the Hell in a Cell match?
Yeah, it was the one the day that Brian Pillman died. I think that's one of the reasons they hadn't used the name up until now.
Up until now?
Yeah, but the Hell in the Cell with Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, that's another one. That Michaels DVD, when you think about that, that was like, on that DVD you got, Undertaker's best match ever? You certainly have Scott Hall's best match ever. You got Kevin Nash's best match ever. Who else's best match ever is on that DVD?
I'm sure it'll probably end up on there.
What?
See, the match listing, they gave 6 matches, but they said there's 3 hours or something of footage or 3 discs, so probably Sid's best match.
I don't know. Maybe. I'm trying to think who... That's Sid's best match. That's a tough one. That's not as easy because you don't have one like Kevin Nash that's way off the charts of everything else he ever did.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Another question is, how does Roddy Piper feel about being, I guess, I don't know what the word is. You know how he's very prided on himself, and now Vince is kind of saying, alluding to insider comments like the Chosen One and making him apologize. How does Piper feel about that, even though it's a storyline?
I think he thinks it's a storyline. I'm sure there's probably, hey, when you go to work there's a trade-off. Everyone at some point probably ends up having to do something that they don't want. That's part of the WWE thing. I mean, and I think in a big organization like that, it almost has to happen anyway. I mean, because, no one man's bigger than the organization, except for Vince.
That's true.
Some of the stuff he's done.
Yeah, but he's done it because he's wanted to. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
Vince has never done anything he did not want to do.
Yeah.
I don't think Stephanie has either.
And my last question is, Ken Shamrock. Do you think after 10 years, do you think he's overrated, or he deserves his place as being a legend among the Gracies and things of that nature? Do you think he's overrated?
I think he was overrated to a degree, yeah. I think that if you look back at where fighting was in 1994 and 1995, and you look at who the fighters were, he was the best at that point of all of them. So in that sense, no, not overrated. And I think a lot of people overlook that. Now, in the last 7, 8 years now, fighting has evolved, 100 years. So there's nobody from that period that could come today and dominate. And, Ken couldn't. And Ken, with what Ken knew then. Now, but if a guy like Ken Shamrock was 19 years old now and was trained in what these guys are trained in, and I mean, who's to say? I mean, it's unfair to judge guys by that standard. It's the same thing with Hoist Gracie. Hoist Gracie was like the best of his era because he beat everybody, but that style wouldn't work today. But you can't hold it against him. I mean, it's one of the things when people in sports, and wrestling especially, I hear it all the time. And I mean, it's a very unrealistic, romantic viewpoint of the guys of the past, because wrestling was not competitive sport then. Could have beaten any of the guys now. And if you really think about it, it's ludicrous. I mean, Kurt Angle, who is not that old, could not go back in amateur wrestling and beat the top guys, and he would be the first to admit it, and he didn't go back. He wanted to do it, thought he could do it, and then he trained with those guys and realized that he could not do it. And that's 8 years, and that's a freak athlete, okay? And it's the same thing in fighting, and, but you've got to respect, if you were the best in the world at something in your day, to respect that the guy was good. So anyway, that's my thought on Ken. I think, yes, overrated to a degree, but, to call him a fraud or anything like that, if you look at the guys that were around, I mean, he beat Boss Rutan, he gave Hoist Gracie his, if there were judges, he would have won that fight. So he beat the people that were around, at the time that were his opponents.
No, you're right. Yeah, just look at Matt Lindland. He just won a silver medal, and I think he advanced in the tournament.
I think he took second, right?
Yeah, he took second
in the nationals, but he hadn't wrestled in 2 years. Also, he'd taken a couple years off to train for fighting. But wrestling evolved so quickly, but fighting's evolved way faster than wrestling, because it started off that level that Gracie and Ken Shamrock and those guys was so primitive compared to what the thing has turned into now.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it. All right, have a good night, guys.
Okay, thanks very much. We're going to go to Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on?
Hey, guys. What I like to talk to you about is the one wrestler who I think could be the next breakout star and could maybe even spark a comeback. That's Tenacious Z.
I think that Tenacious Z could get a lot of media attention if it's handled right, and will.
The thing is, what's media attention going to do if it's bringing attention to a product that even wrestling fans today don't want to watch?
Yeah, you got to have a good product, and I don't think Tenacious Z is not the kind of a guy who's going to carry a product. I think it's more of a novelty. That he can't. What he can do, and it's phenomenal what he can do, but he can't go on TV every Monday night, or I guess he's going to be SmackDown every Thursday night, and do a match, because it'll get old, and people will eventually turn on him if he's overexposed. As much of a great story as he,
which is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think eventually you're right. Yeah.
What I would like to see for them to do for him is I would like to actually see his first match be at the first SmackDown pay-per-view and have it be against Vince himself.
Oh, that's not a good idea, because that's not a good. I mean, his first match on the first SmackDown pay-per-view is a good idea. That's a very good idea. But against Vince, it's a horrible idea, because it's horrible. It's a horrible idea, because
he's someone he can have a really good match with.
Yeah, and he needs to be in there with somebody good, because if he goes in there with Vince, who's not a trained worker, it's going to look like a amateur hour real bad.
Well, what I would do is I would have him try to continue his training and have Vince try and stop him, and finally it comes down to where he has to beat Vince to get the job. And what I would do is I would have him come to the ring with the prosthetic and actually start the match with the prosthetic, and just have maybe him get a move in, and then have Vince kill him for 4 minutes, and then have him take the leg off himself. And then just unleash all his offense and just. Yeah,
but the problem is when he unleashes his offense on Vince isn't going to sell it right, and it's not going to look the great way that it looked when he did it on some of the people in NWA TNA.
This would work if Vince hired someone to take him out.
Yes. If you had someone, and if you had
Kurt Angle.
Kurt Angle would be great, of course, but you don't want to put Kurt Angle in with him. I don't think that's a good idea either. But if you had. If you took a guy and they sent those two guys to OVW and had them train together for a couple of months, like Truth Martini and him had done, and then he's Vince's surrogate in a match, and I think then it could be pretty darn good.
Okay, and I'd like to ask another question about Freddie Blassie.
Yep.
I started watching wrestling in the early 80s, so I pretty much missed his wrestling career. I just remember from the aftermaths how they had the muzzle and he had his feud with John Tolis.
Yeah.
And I was reading how you talked about how there's success in Georgia and other areas, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about his biggest success in the other territories that we fans from today might not have heard about.
Well, he was huge in California and Georgia in particular, and Japan. But I mean, in those days, there are certain guys, and he was one of them. I mean, he could go to a place, and I don't know if it was the magazines or what. It was like with the Sheik. You know, they could go to places, and there's no reason that all the fans should know them, but all the fans would know them. They were like, you know, superstar wrestlers. You know, and I guess it was all the magazine coverage. You know, was probably part of it. But you know, Georgia, you know, feuding with Don McClary, I guess, was probably his big feud over there. Japan with Ricky Dozan, without a doubt. I mean, that was huge.
And that was the greatest story in your Fred Blassie bio.
Which one?
Talking about meeting Ricky Dozan in hell.
Oh, you like that, huh?
Oh, my God, I laughed for hours.
Really? Really? I mean, it was so funny because what it was, that was, they do documentaries on Ricky Dozan in Japan all the time, and the guys who they always talked with, every documentary, so it was Freddie Blassie, Dick Beyer, and Lou Thez, because those were the three famous opponents who were still alive, although Lou has passed on. Because, you know, for years I would, you know, every couple of years, and they would always visit Freddie. I think he lives in, not Mount Vernon, but I think Scarsdale, New York, or near, you know, somewhere in Westchester County in New York. They'd visit him at his house, and like, and Lou Thez and Dick Beyer were just, oh, Ricky was this and Ricky was that, and they would make Ricky Dozan larger than life and much better than he ever really was. And Freddie, like, you know, even though Dick was a total heel, you know, in Japan, it was like, oh, you know, the great Ricky Dozan type thing, right? You know, he's passed on and all this. And Freddie would be like the ultimate heel and just goes, you know, when I die, I'm going to, you know, bite him in hell. And those reporters were like you had seen it, it's actually even funnier than reading it, because it's like these meek Japanese reporters, but Freddie, Ricky's in heaven. And it's like, he's in hell.
And he's a pencil neck geek.
He's in hell. That pencil neck geek, I knew him better than all of you. Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
And if I could just ask one more thing, Dave, before I go.
Sure.
Vince has always, you know, he's kept Blassie around. He's kept Tony Gurria, Lanza, a lot of these older guys. And what I want to know is, why has he kept some of these older guys around and not like other guys like Superstar Billy Graham and a few other guys? Was it like a favor for his father, or? Well,
Blassie, I think he kept around because Blassie was one of Vince's favorites. So I think Vince always wanted to take care of his favorites. You know, Graham, I can't answer the question with Graham. I think that, you know, because Graham was one of his favorites too, and, you know, he groomed Graham to be an announcer, and it just didn't work out.
I remember he was supposed to, like even Graham said that he was promised to be taken care of, and then all of a sudden he wasn't. It's like,
I don't know what the whole circumstance was there, but Gurria, I'm sure, was a promise from Vince Sr., because Gurria was always very loyal to Vince Sr., and you know, so he just has an agent job, and there have been movements from some of the younger agents to get rid of the older agents. Lanza has a lot of friends, and he's very well respected there. You know, and Lanza was never a big WWF guy. I mean, he was more of a Midwest guy, but I think that people respect, like, how he lays out matches and his judgment of matches, I guess, because, you know, they've kept him around for 15 or so years. Okay? All right, Ed. Anyway, we are going to be back right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We're going to go to Jeff in Daytona Beach. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Doing really good.
I just want to talk about Benoit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little frustrated with the whole way they're booking him lately. The last 2
I think we've been frustrated with that for 3 years.
Yeah,
actually longer, because in WCW too. Maybe his whole career. Anyway, go ahead.
It's just like nobody knows how to book the guy, and yet he's like one of the best one on the whole damn roster, you know? It was painful to see him in the six-man tag last month, man. That was just
on the pay-per-view, yeah, that wasn't, you know, especially on that show where they needed a good match. They wasted the best one of the best wrestlers in a match that didn't even have time to be good.
And you know, the thing is, they're really dropping the ball with him, because back when Royal Rumble, man, he got that standing ovation. It's freaking.
And they didn't capitalize on it that well. But again,
I wonder if hindsight that was a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I guess because they're just trying to build it up. Maybe, I was thinking by this time, like SummerSlam, they'd actually have him go against Brock or something, but...
You know, he was supposed to... There was a plan for him to win the title by now already, and it just, it didn't happen. Yeah, he was the original guy, believe it or not.
Yeah,
So,
It's freaking. You'd think like by now they would have done that. So
yeah, plans change.
Yeah, but then I got a couple other things. That you guys know if anybody's pooped in Sable's gym bag yet?
No, nothing like that. I think that nothing like that. No.
No. All right, guys.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no. Oh yeah, I got one more thing though.
Okay.
You know, if they want to get the buy rate high, man, they should hire Neidhart as the Who and have him face Triple H on a Raw pay-per-view, man. That's what you gotta do.
That's like the worst idea I ever heard in my life. Anyway, we're
all right, guys.
All right. Second hour. I want to remind everyone we're going to be joined by Don FRYE, and you can join us at 1-800-878-PLAY, and we'll be talking about pro wrestling with Don FRYE, his upcoming fight with Mark Coleman, his training with Frank Shamrock, and his career, and got a couple of surprises as well for Don FRYE. We got one surprise for him in the second hour as well. So anyway, we'll be back right after the news break. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of the Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
Okay, welcome to the second hour here on Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and our special guest in this hour is Don FRYE, who will be fighting Mark Coleman on June the 8th in Yokohama, Japan. This match will actually be airing on pay-per-view in the United States on June the 13th. And Don, are you with us?
I'm with you, baby.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm growing old, but I look good.
For about 7 years, I guess it's been 7 years since your first match with Mark Coleman, and a year ago we had you on the show and you were about to have that match, and Mark ended up hurting his neck, and this is his first match back since the neck injury. You've had 7 years to think about that first night, and it had to be, realistically, that had to be one of the worst nights of your life, wasn't it?
Oh, no, I think my first wedding night was was the worst night of my life. That probably has to be a real close second, though.
So what makes you, I guess, and you wanted this fight. What's made you want this thing for 7 years now?
Well, it hurt my ego that somebody so ugly could be somebody so beautiful as myself. And, so I just couldn't handle it. And being the immature brat I walked around with my bottom lip sticking out for 7 years, and I finally got the fight. So
you got it. Now, you've been here in California, and you've been training with Frank Shamrock. Why did you pick Frank Shamrock?
I got tired of doing the same old Don FRYE song and dance, and I had to learn something new, and Frank's the one who's scientifically proven that the sport of mixed martial arts has advanced, and he seemed like the logical choice to go to and learn to improve my game.
What is there anything in particular that you're working on as far as game plan, or what you thought you need for Mark Coleman?
Yeah, we're gonna wave some bananas in front of him, fruit and nuts and berries, get his primal urges up, make little puppet shadows on the wall, distracting.
One of the things that, as far as you went through the fighting, there are a lot of guys who have gone from the fighting into pro wrestling, and of course Ken Shamrock would be the most famous in this country, but he was actually a pro wrestler first, then went into the fighting, and then went back to pro wrestling, and then was fairly successful in the WWE. Well, we're going to take a break, but I want to talk. You were, without a doubt, the most successful to have, I don't want to say no pro wrestling background, because I know that you wrestled a few times, but realistically, no pro wrestling background. Went into Japan and was with New Japan and ended up being very, very successful from the fighting, which is a transition that, a lot of people have had a fight, a pro wrestling match here and there, but you were successful for years. Anyway, hold that thought, and we're going to be back with more with Don FRYE on this subject and a lot more right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and our special guest this week is Don FRYE, who has a pretty incredible resume when it comes to fighting and professional wrestling, going from UFC as a two-time tournament champion, including winning the Ultimate, which at the time was the toughest tournament probably that had ever been held in mixed martial arts, and then going into pro wrestling and becoming probably, and for a while, the number one foreign attraction and most popular foreign wrestler in Japan, and then going back with pride and having some unbelievable fights in Pride. I mean, the Ken Shamrock fight last year, the Takayama fight last year, which we're going to talk about, and some of the other fights, including last year with Jerome Banner and Hidehiko Yoshida. I know we've talked about this before. I know you won another match also with Hidehiko Yoshida.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that. You know, if I make it through this one, then that would be the one I'd want. Otherwise, I'm going to retire.
Okay.
If you make it through this one, how many fights do you think you have left?
Probably one more.
One more?
Yeah.
Is your goal to go back to pro wrestling at that point?
Yeah, I think I'm going to return to pro wrestling. Either that or my friend of mine, we both co-owners in a plant nursery, and I'll retire to that, and we'll just drive around, drink beer, and drive the golf cart all day long. Look at the plants.
Yeah. You know, what is there anything? Why do you think? You know, a lot of guys have made the transition from fighting into professional wrestling, and most of the time it really hasn't been successful. And you were very, very successful in Japan with New Japan. What is there anything when you went in that was hard for you when you made the transition? And why do you think that you may have made more successfully than almost anyone else who's tried?
Well, I used to work for a living, so I don't know how much that sucks. You know, I was a fireman. On my days off, I'd shoe horses, and then I got out of that and got back into fighting. And when I got out fighting, I said I didn't want to go back to work for a living. So they said, listen, we want you to do some pro wrestling, and you're going to have to put some guys over. And you got a problem with that? And I said, hell no, not for the kind of money you're offering me.
Now, one of your trainers, and a lot of people don't know this, was Kurt Hennig, and also ended up being a really good friend of yours. What do you think that was really beneficial to you to be trained by someone who, knew the ropes from childhood, really, because of his father being a professional wrestler?
Yeah, that helped me more than anything. Kurt Hennig and Brad Reagans, they gave me a crash course in wrestling. They taught me, 10 years of wrestling within just 6 months, and with their knowledge, and they shared their experiences and their knowledge with me, and that's the problem that a lot of the older guys aren't doing with the younger guys now, because they're afraid of losing their spot, so they don't want to educate the guys properly. And Brad and Kurt, they were a gift from God, and they trained me properly, and they shared their secrets.
Going back, do you think that that's one of the big problems with fighters getting into wrestling is they don't want to put guys over?
Yeah, they get in there and they bring their ego with them, and you got to check your ego at the door if you're going to get involved in pro wrestling. It's entertainment, it's a show, and at the end of the night, who the hell cares? All you're doing is, as long as your paycheck doesn't bounce, that's all that matters.
One of the biggest matches ever in Japan, you were involved in, which was Antonio Inoki's last match, and still, I think, one of the biggest pro wrestling gates that there's ever been. And what kind of, how far in advance did you know you were going to do it? Because I know that they did a tournament, and, it wasn't announced Antonio Inoki versus Don Frye. It was 8 guys, Don Frye, Naoya Ogawa, I think Brian Johnson was in, and a couple of other guys. And the winner of that tournament would then, in the main event, go on to face Antonio Inoki in his last match.
Right. That's a great time, because they put a story to it, and that's something that's missing in pro wrestling now, is there's no stories. And or else they'll run a story for 2 weeks, and if it's not getting a response, they drop it. Well, we had this story that we're going to wrestle off, and the toughest guy would have the opportunity to wrestle Antonio Inoki in his retirement match, and that's exactly what they held to, and it worked out perfectly.
What was your thoughts as far as Naoya Ogawa? Because you were like, the big feud when he started was Don Frye, Naoya Ogawa. You both kind of started pretty close to the same time, and then you broke apart, and then he had the thing, and he actually became, a huge celebrity in Japan to a degree. Certainly a big TV star. From kind of pro wrestling, judo, fighting, all kind of combined into kind of one element.
Right. Yeah, he had a fantastic opportunity. He took full advantage of it, and because to him, And, you know, and more power to him, you know, and I wish him great success, you know, which he has. And, you know, anybody who gets envious or jealous of anybody, that's stupid, because there's plenty of money to go around for everybody.
When a year ago we had you on this show, or just about a year ago, and Mark Coleman had just gotten hurt, and you were going to fight either Kevin Randleman or Yoshihiro Takayama, and it turned out a couple days later that was Takayama that you fought. A lot of people consider that one of the greatest matches of all time. I mean, and I just watched the tape of that last night, and, you know, it's just beyond words, that match. I mean, it's just like, unless you've seen it, I can't describe it. Those of you who've seen it know exactly what I mean, and you were in it.
Cartoon.
It's like a video game. It wasn't like a fight that you're used to seeing. And how would you describe, you know, everything that went through your head during that, you know, 6-7 minutes or whatever it was?
Everything went through my head. See, leather. You know, I think, gosh dang, what did it take to put this big horse down? You know, I'd sit there. We just grabbed each other by the scruff of the neck and just started wailing away. No technique involved. And I watched his face distort right in front of me, and the guy never wavered. I mean, the guy's powerful, and he's got all the guts in the world, and he stayed right there until the referee stopped the fight. But, you know, I mean, that's an example of something that a lot of people don't really, I think a lot of fighters and a lot of pro wrestlers comprehend sometimes, and that is, that match Takayama was a star going into that match, but that match took him to a different level. And he lost that match, and he lost that match convincingly. There wasn't like a referee or a chair or anything like that. He lost, you beat him, but because it was such an unbelievable match, and a lot because he just showed ridiculous amount of guts while he was getting pounded, you know, like a Mick Foley, you know, but you know, I mean, he's become, you know, pretty much, I guess, of the full-time regulars, probably the biggest star of all the Japanese wrestlers, you know, and most people would say it stemmed right from your fight. Yeah, I mean, he's got his 2 world championship belts now. That's right. IWGP and then NWF. Yeah. I mean, so he's the top dog on the hill out there, and he deserves it. You know, I mean, he put in his time, and not everybody has the guts to get in there and do what he did, and he earned what he has. Well, have you ever thought, or has anyone approached you about either doing a rematch between the two of you as a pro wrestling match, or, you know, another one in Pride? No, they haven't approached me yet. You know, I'm all for it. have to see if my right shoulder can handle another 100 blows again. What? Now, speaking of that, I mean, is that where, you know, because, you know, you had shoulder surgery. When was it, in January? Yeah, back in January. I scoped both my shoulders again. Okay, what? That just wear and tear from all the years? Yeah, they, you know, took out a bunch of scar tissue, bone chips, bone spurs, pulled all the garbage out. And what about the elbow? Heck, the elbow's, it's still a little sore, but, you know, it's good enough to pick my nose with. What have you talked with NWA TNA, or have you considered, you know, something with those guys? You know, I talked to them once, and then they never called me back again. So somewhere I've rubbed the people in the U.S. Wrong. WWE doesn't care for me. Well, you know about WCW. Yeah. We talked about that story. Yeah, they don't care for me. As far as when you made the decision, what was the main thing as far as making the decision to go from New Japan to Pride? I guess I was just kind of bored with the situation in New Japan. I felt like my career was pretty much at a standstill, and they weren't using me properly. You know, I got a real bad case of ADD, and 4 years was, you know, the longest I'd ever done anything. And you know, Coleman came back and he won the Pride Grand Prix, and that kind of got my ego stirred up, and I figured, hell, if he can do it, I can do it. So I came back after him. Okay, we're going to go ahead to a commercial break right now. We got a lot more to talk about with Don Frye right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. And for information on either of those publications, you can go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. In fact, right now on the website, you can, in the feature section and headline section as well, there is
information, full rundown of this week's issue of both Figure 4 and The Observer. And if you order it, you'll be glad you did. I know Don Fry reads The Observer, right?
You doggone right. I read it until I'm done. Frank and I were laughing about it. We'll get all our hands on it and stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning reading it. Just ignore our wife the whole time. No matter what she's wearing.
This is funny you mentioned that. Years ago, there were a couple of couples that actually got together, who both read The Observer, and I don't know how, but they got together, right? And so I kind of go, I put together 3 marriages, and then I met this wife of a friend of mine, and just goes, you wrote about that. He goes, do you have any idea how many divorces you've caused?
I bet.
Oh, my God.
That, you do a great job, not to kiss your butt, but... it's really interesting. It's well written, and it cuts to the point, and you don't pull. You don't have any favorites, and you don't pull any punches. I'm impressed.
Yeah. In New Japan, you started there in 1997. Your protege, I guess, Dan Devine, is working there right this second, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
He's probably on a bus somewhere, but. He's
probably messing up a move somewhere.
It's been like 6 years, and you went there. When you went there, they were on fire, and they've had their ups and their downs. And what do you think? The last idea that they had, which was on the last Tokyo Dome, they had pro wrestling matches and Vale Tudo matches, I guess is what we would call them, on the same show. And I mean, did you ever think when you were there that it would get to that? And what are your thoughts on that kind of mix type of a show?
No, I didn't really think it'd ever get to that point. I'm not really thrilled with it. I think they should be separated. For obvious reasons. People go see pro wrestling matches to be entertained, and they go to see fights, basically be entertained, but more and more violent aspect, And there's not much of a story in a real fight because there's not a prescripted storyline, and what happens happens. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I guess it worked, so good for them.
And coming up on this show coming up, how do you watch a lot of tapes of the different fights, or no?
Yeah, I always study my opponent before every fight. Mark Coleman as compared to the different fight, Shamrock, Takayama, Yoshida. What does he bring to the table that's different from them, and what are you looking for in this fight, and what are you looking to avoid that happened in the first fight when you fought him? Well, Mark comes in there and he's got a real good low shot, but he's halfway there anyways, so he doesn't stand up erect. His knuckles drag on the ground when he walks, and so we're gonna crouch down when we punch and try to avoid the takedown, but pretty much accepted the fact that he's a better wrestler than I am, so we are going to go down, but we're working on escape, and we're working on minimalizing the amount of damage he's going to give me, and then try and keep it up as much as we can until he tuckers out like he always does.
How much are you going to weigh going into this fight?
I'll end up weighing anywhere between 225 and 230.
So that's... You know what he's at right now?
That's the last I heard, but Mark could end up jumping 20 pounds.
Yeah.
You may be close to the same weight, because I think he was 229 the last time he fought. Of course, that was a couple of years back. Mm-hmm. So, but he's probably been over 250, certainly early in his career.
Right. When I fought him, I was 210. He was 250, 255, something like that.
Yeah.
And I had a big effect on the outcome of the match. He'd just come off the Olympic trials, so he's in the best shape ever. And I was pretty much read my press clippings and over-impressed with myself. I didn't train very hard for that event, and I paid for it.
What do you think that's kind of a thing that we've seen, like a lot of fighters that have come in with great hype. And I always think, like, psychologically...
Almost every fighter.
Almost every fighter that comes in with great... BJ Penn, we saw it with Robbie Lawler in the last year. And then they go in there, and I don't know if it's... They lose the eye of the tiger, or, so many of the fighters, started out, not having any money. Right. And there's two different ways that you handle getting money. One is forgetting where you came from, and the other is remembering where you came from and working just as hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Complacency is probably the biggest enemy of all fighters. Once you do get on top, you get real complacent and you get lazy, and you think you can handle everything, and then there's always somebody new coming around the corner. Yeah,
it's real hard because so much of it is as far as like the training and everything is the motivation. I don't know if it's the fear or just this this crazy motivation that like that a guy's chasing the Olympic dream or any great any goal. But when you're on top and you've achieved that goal, you're facing a guy as hungry as you were. But sometimes I've achieved when you've achieved your goal, you're not. You know what I mean? It's that little difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say the wolf going up the hill is hungry, but the wolf at the top of the hill, the food is always there.
Right. Now. What's just looking at some of the other fights on the show? Do you have any kind of thoughts on Heath Herring and Mirko Cro Cop?
Yeah, I think it'd be a great fight. Unfortunately for Heath, I think Cro Cop's probably going to get the better of him. Because Heath has a tendency to try and do a stand-up fight, and that'll work to Cro Cop's advantage. And Cro Cop's learned a lot as far as escaping on the mat. So I think that'll be a real good fight.
What's your thoughts as far as I guess you were there the whole most of the whole time from almost the start to the current with and I've been on a few shows with him on the whole Bob Sapp I guess phenomenon in Japan, and how would you explain one who doesn't has never been to Japan?
Hell, I couldn't even attempt to explain something like that. I don't even understand it. Bob Sapp, timing's everything, as they say in the pro wrestling world. And, fortunately for Bob, it worked out great for him. And, God bless him because, it's improved his life 100%.
Yeah.
And he's a superstar. And I guess you wrote that he's going to work for the NFL now and be the Asian consultant or something like that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Can you, he's like, he's going to be a bigger football deal long after he's done with football. Yeah, make more money than he ever did actually playing football.
Right. He's the biggest celebrity, Japan's ever seen,
Yeah. And when it started happening, was there anything that you could see triggered it, or was it just right place, right time, right promoter?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It just had a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately for Bob, he better slow down or he's going to burn out.
I think we've kind of maybe even seen a little bit of it with the Cro Cop thing.
Right.
I mean, because that's the perfect example. Is like, he didn't have time to train, and if a fighter does not have the time to train, that's a dangerous situation.
Yeah, I mean, because psychologically going into the event that you're not physically ready, and so that plays on your mind, and you're pretty much defeated before you enter the ring. Now,
as far as pro wrestling goes, I mean, do you have, as far as like direction, anyone that you would like to do? Is there anyone you'd like to do a pro wrestling match with that you never had a chance to?
Oh, heck. Yeah, I'd like to wrestle Frank Shamrock.
In a pro wrestling match?
Yeah, I think we can both get a midget as a partner and tag team midget martial arts wrestling match. I think it'd be a fantastic idea. I don't know. Angle's injured. Brock Lesnar's big clumsy oaf.
Did you ever train with Brock Lesnar, or was that timing different?
Timing difference.
Oh, okay. Because I know that he also was trained by Kurt Hennig and Brad Rangans.
Right.
Who did you now besides Bryan Johnston? Who else were you training with, or was it just Bryan, you, with Kurt, and Brad?
Yeah, basically it's just us four.
Yeah.
There's one other guy in there, a big powerlifter from Yugoslavia or something, and he didn't last very long, so it really wasn't worth remembering his name.
Now, Bryan, you seen Bryan the last week?
Yeah, I just saw him today too. Brian's doing phenomenal. He's driving around. He drives better than Frank does, that's for sure. Have you ever been in a car with Frank?
Yeah, actually I have.
Holy balls.
Yeah.
It's like being on those bumper cars.
Yeah. We got a phone call we're going to take. We're going to go to line 1. What's going on?
Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
Good. Calling from Phoenix.
Yeah. The Don lives near Phoenix.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Don, where you living?
I think.
Yeah. Don, you know who this is?
That's near Tucson.
Yeah, Don's from Tucson, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Don, you know who this is?
No, who is this?
Well, you better tell him who you are.
Hey, well, I got a few questions for you first, Don, all right?
All right, what the hell do you want?
Don't get mad at me. I'm going to find something out. I'm going to ask you a question I think that no one else has asked you in a long time, maybe ever.
Right.
I was watching your tape and on that Puerto Rico, that David and Goliath tournament. And one of the commentators, when the whole deal was over, was mentioning that you were finished fighting in bull rings in Tijuana. Now, what was all that about, man? Bull rings in Tijuana.
Yeah, in boxing. After college, I did a couple years of professional boxing, and they lined me up. My manager lined me up with an event down in a bull ring in Tijuana. And, you're up there getting ready where they keep the bulls in the bullpen, flipping on the manure, and then you walk down the ramp where they release the bulls.
You know that I have been to that place on a couple of occasions that you guys are talking about?
Yeah.
I was there when they were throwing the dirt with the manure at the wrestlers.
Yeah, it's one of the nicer facilities in town.
Hey, I believe that.
Hey, before you say who you are, we're going to have to go to a commercial break. We'll be back with more right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and of course our special guest this week, Don the Predator FRYE, who's got a big fight coming up on June 8th in Yokohama, Japan, which will air on pay-per-view in the United States on June 13th. And after watching a couple of Pride tapes in the last couple of days, although I'd seen them before, for those of you who've never seen it, and have complained about pro wrestling, Pride, it's a different deal, but it's very appealing to a pro wrestling fan because there's a lot of similarities to the pro wrestling, and the commentary is awesome, and the fights are usually very good, and often some of them are great. And
the skits are better than anything on Raw or SmackDown.
Oh my God, no kidding. And the same type of interviews actually in some of the cases, especially like with Don FRYE. And Don FRYE, of course, fighting Mark Coleman, who he faced 7 years ago, first rematch of the first fight that Don ever lost. And Don's only lost twice in mixed martial arts in a long career of about 7 or 8 years. So there's only 2 fights to avenge. And anyway, we also have a caller. You're going to have to reveal your identity. Take off the mask, dude.
Hey, listen, I'm a huge fan, Dave, of Don the Predator FRYE. I'm actually a huge mark for the man. I can't get enough of the videos. I've got to have the honor of meeting this man in person. The man is from Tucson, Arizona. It's Billy Graham is from Phoenix, Arizona. Right now, we're Don the Predator FRYE, my brother. What's going on, man?
Don, it's Billy Graham.
Billy Graham?
Yeah.
No way.
Yes way.
Oh, my God. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. I want to know how you're doing.
I'm tell you what, I'm happy as a pig in crap right now. I've never been so excited to talk to somebody on the phone.
Oh, man. Hey, it's a real honor, Don. But seriously, I've been watching your... I haven't been able to watch too much action for the last 2 or 3 years. I've been pretty sick. I had a list that not long ago.
Yeah, God bless you, man.
And God just blessed me. I'm doing fantastic with that new liver, But I tell you, I was watching some of your older tapes, and that deal with the Brazilian in Detroit. That I think Dave was sitting ringside watching that.
Amori Batesh fight.
The jiu-jitsu champ. You just really this thing was so horrifying to watch. Man, every time you hit his forehead with an elbow, you could hear it thump on the tape. It was just an incredible deal. You ever, let me ask you a question. When you're on the top and some guy's on his back and he's taking a beating like that, do you ever talk to each other? Like, you ever say, don't you have enough, partner? Or how does that go, Don?
No, sir, not that time. But I did next time against Mark Hall, and that's what ruined me that night. Is I felt sorry for him, and I didn't kill him like I should have. But Tesh, I was just unfortunately I was traveling into the dark side at that period of my life, and I was literally trying to kill the guy, and the guy almost died. He was in the hospital for a week in the intensive care unit with tubes in his head.
Whoa.
And,
I believe that.
Yeah, God bless him. He pulled out, and he's fighting again.
Well, let me tell you something. When we were watching, Valerie, my wife Valerie, absolute angel from heaven, taking care of all my problems. And Dave Meltzer knows that for a fact. Yeah. Dave knows Valerie, and we were watching this the other night. This match from Detroit with this guy, man. And when he was just absorbing so much punishment, and Valerie was, my wife, she was getting so upset. She says, why does the man stop? Why doesn't FRYE stop? I said, Valerie, this thing was 7 years. So funny, man. But she got into this thing so bad. She said, my God, I feel so sorry for this poor guy from Brazil. I said, if the guy from Brazil was on top, he'd be doing the same thing as Don.
Yeah.
That's funny stuff.
I've never let my wife watch that fight.
Really?
Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because that is a very gruesome fight, and that fight there almost ruined the whole sport.
Yeah,
I believe that.
They just, I think now, there's a feeling that you stop it a lot earlier than that. I think that with him, he himself, he had no quit in him whatsoever, and I think that unfortunately, worked against him in that fight because he took just ungodly damage.
Right. Big John McCarthy was kind of lenient towards the Brazilians because he was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu student. And, after Royce Gracie, everybody expected the jiu-jitsu guys to be able to come back from anything.
Right, and the other thing was he was favored to beat you. I mean, you were just, a guy that, you know what I mean, inexperienced, although you had won a tournament, going against a guy who had so many jiu-jitsu matches and so many fights.
Right.
And, it was like the first time that somebody had seen it, as far as the UFC goes, like a jiu-jitsu master, because he was one of the best, just get beaten on just ground and pound by a guy who, the key was that you were a boxer and a wrestler, so his jiu-jitsu, he couldn't take you down. Right. And the match was going to be where you wanted it because you had you were the better wrestler of the two and you were the stronger of the two. But I remember that thing and just.
Hey, well, let me ask you something.
Okay,
would that have possibly been the match that triggered John McCain's reaction to all this stuff?
No, he was reacting before that.
Before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he was. Okay.
That gave him plenty of ammunition.
Don. Since that time, the UFC and Pride, it's changed a lot over the years. As far as rules go and things like that, as a fighter. And also as someone who wants to see the sport go, what do you think rules have been changed that should have been changed, and maybe if you have some ideas on rules that you think maybe should be a little bit different? What's your thoughts on what would make still a great sport at the same time? You want guys to live. You don't want to kill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Everything I gave Mari Batesh, Mark Coleman gave me the next event.
That's right.
So I sat around. And laughed about what I did to the guy, and guy got kind of pissed off at me, kicked me into shorts, and sent Mark down there to straighten me out.
Now, what was your reaction? Taking the beating from Mark Coleman, and it was a terrible beating.
Yeah.
Afterwards, was your first reaction, I never want to do this, I never want to fight again, or was it? This is what I did wrong, and I can't wait to get him back, or something in between.
I tell you what, they hauled me off to the hospital in an ambulance. I took 4 bags of IV fluid in the ambulance on the way to the hospital because I was so dehydrated. And as soon as my guys got there, and I became semi-conscious, I told them, hey, we're going to get this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I meant it too.
It's been taking you 7 years.
Why? Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Why has this return fight taken almost 7 years to come to pass?
Yes, sir.
What's the deal on that, Don?
Beats the heck out of me,
Timing.
Like I said, I left mixed martial arts and went into pro wrestling, and then when Mark won the Grand Prix back in 2000, I figured, hey, I got to get back in there. See if I still have it. He's back at the top of the game, and I want to fight the best.
Yeah, so that was That was going to be really my next question is when you left and went into pro over for Inoki with the pros, how was that transition? How did you transition from real fighting to pro? How did you do that transition? How did that work for you?
It worked real easy, because I grew up running around the house thinking I was superstar Billy Graham and Ric Flair, and and I was strutting around, flexing my biceps and my pectorals and waving my hair, and it was something I always wanted to do, and another one of my dreams come true, and I was happy to do it.
Yeah, well, that's an incredible deal because. I'm just wondering now that you're in pro wrestling now, you're back into Pride. How much do you really? I know there's no quit in you. I mean that's obvious. Any man watch you compare you to the Brazilian kid, the beating you laid on him, and then the punishment you were absorbing from Mark Coleman. Well, there's no quit in you. You were going to tap out. You were.
Oh God, Don, seriously, Don's like one of the toughest guys. Mentally, anyone's ever seen. I mean, like other fighters. I got to tell you a story when you fought Takayama, Frank Shamrock, and a bunch of fighters were over our house watching that show. And when it was over, Frank Shamrock stood up and just goes, and he points to everyone and goes, "Nobody in this room is ever fighting Don Frye." Just like that.
Yeah.
After that fight, because that was just. I tell
you what, Don. I had Dave send me a few notes on you when I knew you were. When he told me you're going to be on and stuff, and just one of my notes here is you in fighting Yoshida, you got a dislocated elbow.
Yes, sir.
Now you didn't tap,
No, sir.
and so you suffered a lot. Now I've had a few hip replacements, but I've had dislocated hips, and I tell you, Well, after one of my hip surgeries, I dislocated about 3 days after I got out of the hospital, and that hip, the femur went from my hip socket all the way up to my lower oblique, and I was ready to shoot myself. How could you, with a dislocated shoulder, let this guy go ahead and pull, and what was your threshold of pain,
I just didn't think he could do it. And when he did it, I didn't think it hurt so bad at the time.
Well, that's incredible. I tell you what, I know Dave has, and you probably have too. About a month ago, we all heard about this guy who went camping and got his arm caught underneath the 1,000.
Right.
Yeah.
He cut his arm. And first of all, he broke the radius, his forearm, because he couldn't cut through the bone. But the guy broke the bone and then cut his arm off. And all my doctors at the Mayo said you had to use a dull, dirty knife to do it. But now that raised the bar of.
Yeah, that was tough too.
Yeah.
But I believe you're a man that could do this.
I hope he never has to.
If you had to, you would do it, man.
Well, it's like going home with a woman who's so coyote ugly, You wake up in the morning, whether you chew your arm off and wake her up.
Let me ask you something, Don. What is your thoughts on turning? After you're through, I know I don't have any fights you have left in you in your heart. You probably will fight forever. But do you ever think about turning pro, trying to turn pro here in this country?
I know he wants to.
Well, sir, they work too hard over here. And I've got a 2-year-old and 3-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And they're the center of my life. And the boys in WWE, they're on the road 320 days a year.
Yeah.
And they're missing the opportunity to watch their children grow up. Whereas for doing pro wrestling over in Japan, you work, most I ever worked was 20 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
So that was just, that's the perfect situation. There's no sense to come over here to the United States and lose out on my children.
One of the things as far as because a lot of people don't think of fighters or pro wrestlers as people, who have families and everything. And of course, with the young children that you have. How, as far as the training and everything like that, do you consider that like a positive? Like, I can't get hurt because, I got to be with them. And does it make you train harder? Or mentally, what's the difference between now and, like, let's say, fighting 6-7 years ago?
Yeah, I guess there's a little bit of a doubt in my mind now because From pro wrestling, I had my neck operated on. I had 3 vertebrae fused in my neck. And every once in a while, it goes through my mind, what happens if I end up getting my neck broken, end up paralyzed, and I can't watch my girls, do simple things like go to school, cheerlead, play sports, something like that. So that's something that subconsciously does have an effect on me, and makes me want to train harder and makes me want to end the fight sooner.
Yeah. We've got to head to our last commercial break. We'll be back with both Billy and Don Frye right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, we're back here in the closing moments of the show here. We've got Don Frye and Billy Graham as our guests. Of course, I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bryan Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, and we're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. here on the Sports Byline Radio Network. And I also want to let everyone know that in a couple of weeks, not exactly sure what week, but we will get Billy on as a regular guest, because I know there's a lot of stuff that we've been wanting to talk to him about, and a lot of stuff as far as your comeback and autobiography that you're working on right now, and a lot of other things. And, of course, Don has got a huge fight on June the 8th against Mark Coleman in Yokohama, Japan. That'll be on pay-per-view on June the 13th. And, Don, I wanted to ask you, before we get out of here, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, what's your thoughts on that one? Because I know that, you know Randy Couture pretty well, right?
Right, I know Randy from way back when, a couple decades ago when we wrestled together at Oklahoma State. But I think Chuck's gonna take it.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell Don one thing, Don. If you don't put a ribbon on Mark Coleman in Yokohama, I'm not buying the pay-per-view on the 13th.
I'll tell you what, sir. I am going to bore you. I'm going to dedicate this fight to you, because Dave, I want to thank you. This is the most exciting thing anybody has done for me since the birth of my children.
Oh, my God.
I tell you what, Billy Graham was a hero of mine I don't want to say since I was a little boy, because Billy would kill me, but for a long time, and this is one of the most exciting things I've ever had in my life. Thank you very much.
I tell you what, you are a hero of mine, buddy. I'm watching all these tapes and boning up on you. You are a hero, and you're a hero to my wife. Your wife, the woman behind the man.
Have you seen the Takayama fight, sir?
He'll be seeing it. Don't worry. He hasn't seen it yet, though.
I'm going to dedicate this fight to Billy Graham, superstar Billy Graham.
All right, that's awesome. I'm glad I'm so sorry that we're out of time. Don, hey, best of luck in the fight and the rest of the training and everything like that. And Billy, thanks so much for doing the show on short notice. It was, just to let everyone know what happened about a week ago. Don and I were just talking, and he just mentioned to me that he wanted to meet Billy Graham, was like a goal of his, so I kind of just set this thing up. So, anyway.
Thank you very much. This is the most exciting thing I've happened for a long time.
Okay, Don, hey, best of luck, Don, and best of luck, Billy. And Bryan, thank you very much. We got to get out of here. We'll see you all next Sunday.